what we have here is a big bucket of yellow junk, or some people may think is junk. I have a big Rubbermaid tote that's still full of yellow junk. One man's junk is another man's treasure. That is what they say anyway, but realistically what we have here, I think we have enough here to put together kind of a running Pro Mac 1010. I'm kind of lacking in the carburetor and coil department, but I think I can come up with something that'll work. I think I had 2 ignition coils. One of them was like, both were missing the coil wire. One of them was kind of broke where the coil wire goes in, so both coils may be good, but we'll have to come up with the coil wire. I'm sure I can find something. If we have to put one off of an automobile on it, it doesn't matter as long as we can get spark to the plug. But with all that said, we'll bring you guys around to the workbench and lay all this garbage out and see what we have and what our options are. Alright, my messy, sloppy bench. First thing you're going to need the magnetic tray. Not really, but it was laying there, so whatever. Then you might need a nice, modified, fully customized, professional welded header pipe for a 10 series McCulloch. Actually really loud on whatever you put it on. Then you're going to need a big old bucket of nothing but McCulloch 10 series bolts and parts. Probably one of a few that I have laying here. What else do we have? There's a cylinder, but I don't know if we'll use that one or not. It's got a big scratch under the intake port. I think I remember what that came off of. Pretty sure it's a 1-10 cylinder. They use a smaller bolt that goes through the intake that one of the saws that had the bullfrog carb, but these have been drilled and tapped out to an M6, so that's just an extra cylinder that was laying in that bucket. We have our shroud that would go on the bottom of the cylinder. I may actually have 2 of those in here, but what we have here is a Pro Mac 1010 tank assembly. Doesn't look half bad. I really hope I have a good throttle linkage, and it's looking like it's one of those small fuel lines we all love that doesn't fit very well, so we are gonna have to come up with something on that, but I'm sure that's probably a brand new aftermarket fuel line. They work awesome for the McCulloch. We got to have the Pro Mac 1010 cover. I've actually got a nice saw over there that this little knob is broken on, so I don't know, I may not use that on this one. We'll just have to see. I'm undecided on whether I want to paint this or not. It doesn't look bad, so we probably won't. Just for fun anyway, but another 1-10 cylinder. Those smaller bolts I was talking about, they're also longer. You can use this cylinder on a standard 1010 and those bolts, but you got to chop about half of them off or they're too long. Another thing, the exhaust ports on these, I should have shown that on the other one, but you know how your 1010 uses that like plastic insert gasket? These are a little different. That one's even different than the first one I had over here. I picked that one up off of eBay a while back because it was cheap. But if you'll look, that flange is just flat completely across. You'd either just use some high temp silicone or just a regular old flat metal gasket or something, I guess. But most cases I just use some high temp silicone or just send it without anything. Yeah, there we people love that, but come on, it's a junk paw build. 1010 clutch cover. Doesn't look like it's ever even been drilled for a set of dogs. Maybe it's got one hole at the bottom, one hole at the top. That one has been drilled for dogs. One crusty looking starter cover. It's really not that bad, just missing the paint off the bottom, and that plastic shield looks to be intact. I actually have a few more of those over there. I think that was the better looking one. Rim style clutch drum. That was a worry I had if I even had a clutch. But we did, so. And that honestly is not for one of these. I need to take that back to my big tote of parts. That's one of those air filters that's non-existent that you cannot find anymore. So lay that over here out of the way somewhere. First carburetor, looks like we've had this on a race saw. Or robbed the choke out of it for something else, who knows. Single jet carb, so we probably just robbed the choke out of it to go in another build. Another big baggie of McCulloch hardware. I bought a bunch of those off eBay. About $10, usually 20 sometimes. You can get you a big Ziploc bag full of hardware for saws. Just search whatever saw you're looking for and type hardware out from it. This one even looks like it's got a piston ring in it and a clutch bearing. Another baggie of 10 series hardware. That'll usually work for about any saw you're fooling with. And that's the bottom bracket. That one looks like it's got plenty of paint still on it. Still have 2/3 of the paint still on the saw anyway. And we're probably going to check this out and map it out, but I think I know what cylinder that is. And there's one clutch needle bearing in the floor. We will need that, but I'd put together one a couple years back. Everybody went on about how well it ran. It ran okay. I've built some that run better, but I'm pretty sure that's the engine out of that. We'll have to map that out and check it out, but I've done something like this, and it's got good compression. And good compression on these, if you've got over 130 psi, you're doing good. And yes, I did say that, 130 psi. There's actually a McCulloch muffler bolt that hit the floor. If you've not seen one of those, we'll throw that in our magnetic tray I said we had. Points box, I threw that in there because I think I need to cut the wire off of it for the connector to hook up my chip. We don't want points, that's old school stuff on an old school saw. And here's one of the coils. That one's broke right here. I'm sure we get a wire down in there and some JB weld, it'd be just fine. There's another one of those. I don't know why I put two in the box, but that one's got a lot of paint left on it as well. We'll just pick the better looking one and go from there. And I actually found a handlebar that was not smashed up, so that's good too. We'll use that. What else? There's a couple more parts in this bucket. Clutch itself. If you get in a hurry and put these on with an impact and zip it down too hard, it'll split right in here every time. So we're really careful about putting clutches back on. Not sure what carb this is. It's a 1010 carb. Does it have a idle screw? It does indeed have an idle screw, so it is a 1010 carb, but it looks like we had it on a race saw, you know. No choke. If you've got race saws and you've got your choke mechanism still in it, you're missing the concept of what a race saw even is. Somebody will hammer me for that and tell me I'm crazy, but we used to take the choke horn and completely cut it off the top of old Holley carburetors. Why do you need a choke on something that you're racing? Just squirt a little fuel in it and prime it and start it up. But that is probably off like a Super Pro 70 or 80 or 81 or something that uses the intake boot. 60 may use the same thing. I don't know. I don't even know where it came from, but I have it, so for some reason it was in that bucket. What else? The other ignition coil, and that's kind of my concerns of if I'm going to have a coil we can use. Because that engine already has a chip mounted on it. Hopefully it's good, but this one just needs a coil wire. So hopefully it's a good ignition coil. And I think that might be the air filter we need for this. If we use one that's kind of flattened out, it's, you know, race saw, so why on earth do we need an air filter anyway? I mean, we don't even have a choke, so why would we need an air filter? And looks like another muffler bolt. 3/8/7 rim, and that is actually one of the bolts that goes through the oil tank into the engine. Show me a 10-10 bolt, I'll tell you where it goes every time. Anyway, once I figure something out, we'll try to have a little fun with this. Alright guys, I've mapped this out, and the first thing we're going to talk about here is the intake port. I know some people find this stuff entertaining, other people probably won't even watch the video, but it's just that same old deal. It is what it is. Don't touch the intake port, just leave it the hell alone. It's good enough as is. If you want to go in and texture it a little bit, that's fine. It's wide enough. What timing that's there is about right at the max that you can do. I've tried it all. I've tried filling the intake full of JB weld, making the intake smaller, reshaping it, making it look more like a modern intake. I've tried little notches in the floor of the intake. I've tried lowering the whole intake floor. I've tried notching pistons more times than I can remember. These saws do not like any intake timing thrown at them at all. Not even just a little bit. I'm talking like a couple of degrees. You start ending up with spit back issues and idle quality, and losing a ton of torque in the cut. That's what we don't want to do here. If you have not seen the inside of one of these, we have like 6 finger ports, 3 on each side, and they have like a twisting motion. I'm assuming his research and development on that, I'm talking Robert McCulloch, the R&D on that was probably to help aid in loop scavenging, because they're kind of in a twist. If that makes sense to you or not. If you don't know, these are loop scavenged engines, which means comes up through the transfer port, loops around and back out the exhaust port, is kind of why we change angles and things on transfer ports. But these were raised quite a bit. The uppers look like they were, or the port itself, the upper portion of the port was opened up and reshaped a little bit, and looks like they were case fed. You can look through the intake port and see it all once it's open. But 118 on the uppers. Alright, exhaust port. I don't know, maybe you can see they've been opened up. It is ported. This one was raised typically on something you're wanting to run, say something over a 20-inch bar on. I would recommend not touching the roof of the exhaust port, just widen it, be done with it. This one's set on around 100. So we got 100, 118, and 60. Again, don't touch the intake port even on a cookie cutter. They run better with the intake. But with all that said, I'm going to try to assemble this. I'm not going to video it. I have assembly and disassembly videos on this series of saw. Maybe I'll put some up on the end screens, maybe I won't, but they should be easy to find. But hopefully the next thing we see is this thing somewhat together. Alright guys, she's starting to look like a power saw. I've got to get the ignition lined out and the handlebar on it, and basically should be ready to fire it up, and of course clutch mounted on it. But this was the cream of the crop of my junk, I guess. This linkage was even screwed up and bent. I've been sitting there trying to bend it back to where it doesn't pop out of the trigger. Think I've got it. This is a chokeless setup. We'll just prime it, start it. Who really cares? Had 2 different fuel lines. One was a OE, which is what's in it now, and it fit that tank still kind of loose, so we put some glue around it, and then I've got JB weld around it, so it'll probably pour and leak everywhere, I'm sure. But that's if we fill it up over half of a tank or turn it up on its side. So we'll probably look into getting a better fuel line. I found one place that sells that fat fuel line on eBay, and it ain't cheap. It's about 30 bucks for that one line. So let's just hope the JB weld sets up good and holds. But I get the ignition figured out. I did pull the flywheel back off. It probably had a 4 or 6 degree advance. I'd say she's got 15 now. We want to give it all it's got, I guess. I went with the little header pipe I'd made years ago. I don't even remember what I made that for. I think it was a 700 or something, but it should be nice and loud. Neighbors will love it. Honestly, my neighbors around here I don't think really care. Yeah, hopefully maybe the next thing we see is this thing fired up. But my 1010 pile's getting low. I looked, I actually don't have another starter cover unless it's in another tote somewhere. Like to never found 2 carb bolts. I've still got a bunch of parts, but I don't think I have enough to put another saw together anyway. Maybe like a bottom end and the tank assembly, but this one's probably going to be it for a while on the junk McCulloch's. She's sounding pretty nasty. I was beginning to wonder if that carburetor was any good, but I guess the diaphragms were a little dry, but once it picked up fuel, it is sounding good. This thing's like... probably north of 14 grand. Yeah, she's sounding pretty good, guys, but it's starting to pour the rain. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but putting it in a piece of wood is going to be another day. I've got a chain brake cover. I've got to locate some nuts, bolt it on, or just rob some off of another saw, and of course get a good bar and chain set up on it. Cut some cookies, but anyway, guys, there you have it. Pro Mac 1010 built from junk, and as you can see, she's a screamer. Y'all have a good one.